Michael Bird. Michael Bird never faced charges for Ashley Babbitt's murder. The other person, Roseanne Boylan. Roseanne Boylan was in the West Tunnel area. She was trampled, suffocated, and was beaten severely by metal baton by a lady named Lila Morris. There were two others that day that died because of flashbangs and munitions that were fired off. So, subsequent to that, there were police officers that actually committed suicide. There was a handful of them. I don't remember the number right now, but it was around a half dozen or so. So there certainly was death that resulted from that event. But the larger tragedy is the number of people who have been wrapped up into the system, persecuted by the Department of Justice, ripped out of their lives, out of their homes, flashbangs, armed SWAT type teams coming to their homes and, with multiple cars and so on, and disrupting people's lives. So there's trauma that was inflicted upon them. And again, I'm sorry, we gotta get the technology going here. Micah, if you're here, I had this hooked up working fine before. Might be taking a minute. Thank you. So a couple things as I get started. What I want to talk to you about is what we've been doing over the past 2 years. We just a few weeks ago had our second anniversary of Friday night vigils for January 6ers. And what happens with those is we start at 7 o'clock. We started this at the Northern Neck Regional Jail. Has anyone here ever heard of that? Northern Neck Regional Jail serves 4 counties in the Northern Neck: Richmond County, Westmoreland, Northumberland, and Gloucester. Thank you, Michael. And so there were about 50 January 6ers that made their way through the Northern Neck Regional Jail. When we found out about that, some of the people that are up in Washington, D.C., Ashley Babbitt's mother and others who have a vigil every single night outside of the D.C. jail, they've been doing it for over 800 days, or around 830 days now. They came out, met with our group, and helped us to figure out how to set up this sort of thing, set up a live stream, and how to do this, and how to contact the prisoners. So what we do is we spend a little bit of time every night talking about things, trying to educate people on current events with the January 6ers. And then we usually have 4 or 5 phone calls from within inside the jail. And we get to hear the stories from these men. Sometimes they go into great detail, sometimes they just talk a little bit about their lives, about their families, and so on. But this is the key. When you personalize these events with people, you get to know people, you realize that these people are no different than any one of us that were in this room. Many of them were. Many of them were very law-abiding, upstanding people. Many of them quite religious, many of them former law enforcement or military more commonly. And they simply were in the wrong place at the wrong time and got swept up into things. So this is why we've tried to provide a voice to them so that they can get their message out and let the rest of the country understand what's going on. So I wanted to focus, first of all, again, I mentioned Ashley Babbitt, and then Brian Sicknick and Kevin Greason were the 2 other gentlemen, along with Benjamin Phillips and Roseanne Boylan, that died on January 6th. Brian Sicknick actually died the next day he was the officer that died from the complications of a stroke that he suffered on January 6th. You might remember a story about somebody with a fire extinguisher hitting him over the head. That was complete fabrication. It never happened. All right. And then ultimately, several more people, January 6ers, have committed suicide over time. And I think that number's around a half dozen at this point now, too. Some of them, it was just too much for them to take. So it's important to really understand the facts because there's so much noise out there around this. So one of the places that I go to Who's a fan of NPR Public Radio here? Well, they do an excellent job. Every week, they update a database that tracks how many January 6ers have been arrested. And they've got graphs and things on here. I'm going to try to pull these up to let you see. Last week, as of last week, we are at 1,542 arrests so far for January 6th. 3 last week, about 8 the week before, and about a dozen the week prior. So it's been on average of 1 or so a day. And it's still continuing. Tomorrow afternoon, they'll update this website again, and I'll be able to take a look and let you know. The charges are typically misdemeanor charges that you and I would face out here. And when you have a misdemeanor charge for trespassing, you typically don't spend any time in jail. You go before the magistrate, you're charged, you're released, you pay a fine, whatever the case may be. But the most common charges were civil disorder, entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly and disruptive conduct in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly and disruptive conduct in the Capitol building or grounds, parading, demonstrating, or picketing in the Capitol building or grounds. Now granted, some people did get in altercations with police. You can argue, depending upon the case, whether they went there to do that or not, but in most cases, I believe they were in a position where they felt that they had to defend themselves at that point. So one of the gentlemen that was recently released, John Mellis, he's from Williamsburg, he actually was in that tunnel where Roseanne Boylan was killed, and there was tear gas that was being deployed on people. He, in his fit of what to do, used a stick of some sort and tried to push a police officer's mask off. His thinking was, well, if he's got to breathe this gas, maybe he'll stop deploying it. So that was his assault on that officer. He didn't do anything more than that, but he faced very significant charges. I think he spent something like 40 months in jail. So we're going to talk to another gentleman here about 8:30. He's been released. He's been out for about 6 weeks now. He became very, very active with the Trump campaign and door knocking, and it's a really great story, so I'm excited to have him call in and talk to you about that a little bit. The other thing I want to talk to you about, in my research of all this, I, somewhere along the line, ran across a book called Justice Denied, and there's some of them on the table back there. I purchased them from Amazon. They're $15 a piece. If any of you would like to make a donation and pick up a copy, I really highly recommend it. Hal Woltz was arrested in 2006 in North Carolina for a crime he did not commit, and he spent 87 months in the jail system in North Carolina. You might wonder, well, how did he spend 87 months for a crime he didn't commit? Because the morning that he was arrested, they kidnapped his wife and charged her as well, and had them both in the prison for 3 months. She took poorly health-wise. They had 2 young children, boys that were 11 and 9 years old, I believe. And she just was failing of a broken heart. He finally pled guilty so that they would release her. And then the rest of his 87 months, he spent working through the system, trying to work through appeals. He had a corrupt prosecutor, he had a corrupt judge, and his own attorney was working on the inside with them. This is the other thing with what's going on. We were just talking about that, James and I were talking earlier. This whole system is set up with prosecutors, public defenders, judges, and so on. They all work together. They work together in the same thing, and so the system is meant to process people through. And the way they go about it is really, it's just mind-blowing. So again, I highly recommend the book, Justice Denied, Hal Woltz. You'd be amazed by the things that go on in this country. This is supposed to be the country, the land of the free, right? We are also the most highly incarcerated country in terms of per capita population of any country in the world. More people are in jail per capita in the United States than anywhere else in the world. And that's got to change. So I've become friends with Hal Woltz, and we communicate. By the way, he lives in Poland at this point in time. Once he got out of jail, he had some hints from people that if he kept talking, he was going to face consequences. He lost his marriage, lost his 2 children, lost his fortune. He had to start all over again, but he did not stop the fight. And he put together, he's authored about 6 different books, and one of the books, I have a few of these back there as well, it's called Justice Restored, and it's 10 steps to end mass incarceration in America. So it's a roadmap here. I don't get to read all the books I buy, just to tell you, but I try as best as I can. Has anyone ever heard of 3 Felonies a Day? 3 Felonies a Day is by Harvey Silvergate. And the premise of this book is, without you even knowing it, in your normal activities of the day, you could be breaking the law, maybe even committing a felony. Things like harvesting rainwater from your roof in some areas is illegal to do. Just these kinds of things that came up. Originally, the federal government had 3 things that they were in charge of in terms of laws and prosecuting crimes, and they had to do with treason and high government crimes. And now there's something like 300,000 statutes on the book that the federal government can charge us for. So it's just crazy. You can step out of line very, very easily. And then the last I will say about Hal Woltz, this is a book that some of you might find very interesting. It's called, this was just written here in 2024, it's called The Intellectual Case for Christ. And it's about his journey, his spiritual journey through his life, where he came to the realization that Jesus Christ is his Savior. And it's a fascinating book. So I highly recommend all of those. And I'm going to have, there's some little half-size sheets, handouts in the back that have some of these websites and so on that I wanted to talk to you about. So you can pick those up on the way out. Let's see. Touched on that. Here's another one I wanted to mention. I was fortunate enough back in September to go to a watch party in Texas. It was called the First Amendment Film Festival, and it was packed full of about 12 hours of films put together that talked about everything from the pandemic that we all went through and how they dealt with that and what they did in terms of taking our rights. Had to do with the stolen election. I believe it was stolen in 2020. Had to do with January 6th, of course. And this is another one that's on that reference sheet, 18filmfest.com. For $25, you can get access to all of those films, and they're highly informative, and they tell a story that most people aren't aware of. One of the films on there is called January 6th, A True Timeline. So there's so much noise around January 6th, but what this did was they started with film footage from various cameras and video cameras around Washington, D.C., starting at 4 o'clock in the morning and progressing through the day. And it was a very short film, but it really laid out what happened, when it happened, and then the other interesting part of things is when Ashley Babbitt was shot was right about the same time that they decided that they were not going to certify the election. So this was all an orchestrated, planned event. They wanted people to go in there and cause a ruckus. There's so many things that we've learned about, including Capitol Police officers who have their helmets that they wear. If anybody's in construction, you know that hard hats need to be certified by OSHA. And if they get a year or two old, they need to be back in and checked and so on. Same with police officers' helmets. They decided to round up 30 or 40 of these helmets just before January 6th, which is not the standard protocol. Typically, your helmet gets expired, you go in and get it taken care of when you can. They decided to do this I believe, for the purpose of not having protection for these guys. So a lot of Capitol Police officers had ball caps or bike helmets on, those kinds of things, instead of their formal helmets. So there was definitely an effort to create mayhem on that day. So that's really, there was not much of a slideshow, but I was going to pull up some websites and so on if you were interested. I guess I'm going to turn this over to James here shortly, but I want to make sure I've covered everything before I do and maybe give you a chance for some questions. At 8:30, James Grant's going to call us, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his story and what he's gone through and what it's like. He was a gentleman that went through Northern Neck Regional Jail. So in our advocacy for that, we learned something which we can't really look away from, which is regional jails are a terrible place to be. They're a business. That's what they are. Northern Neck Regional Jail, I went to their jail board meeting yesterday. They have 411 inmates there. 220 of them are federal. The breakdown of the counties was 30, 40, and 60 or whatever, something like that, of the surrounding counties. Now, if you think about this, people end up in a regional jail for many different reasons. Child support's a big one. You can't afford your child support, you get behind on it, give you a chance to get paid, you don't do it, you go into jail. People go to jail on weekends, weekend warriors, and so on. There's so many different ways. Drunk driving, that'll get you, land you in jail. There's 220 federal prisoners in there. These people are rapists, murderers, pedophiles, all kinds of different kinds of people. Why are our counties putting us in with those kinds of people when we just did something that was not really, of that level? So that's a problem. The food is horrendous. They get 2,200 calories a day. Food is almost inedible. If they didn't have what's called commissary, many of them would not have survived. Commissary is an opportunity for them, if they have the money, to order things, whether it be snacks, bags of chips, coffee, hygiene products, things like that. When you get thrown into jail, you get the very bare minimum. Toilet paper, a tiny roll of toilet paper that's supposed to last you a week, a tiny toothbrush that lasts a few brushings, and a tiny bar of soap, and not much else. So the treatment that these people go through in these jails is just horrendous. We're working really hard with that jail board. We're trying to get them to be held accountable. And this has awakened us to realize that the J6ers are not the first to talk about these problems. Other people have tried to push back when they have a loved one that's in these jails. But they don't get very far because they get pushed down, they get pushed away. And the January 6ers, on the other hand, as I mentioned before, most of those people were upstanding, law-abiding people. They went to Washington, D.C. to redress their grievances, which is what we're allowed to do, right? So they're not going to sit back and be quiet. They're going to let people know what went on. And I think you've only just begun to hear it from them. So we've got work to do on a local level here as well. A couple of the handouts I have in the back is one. It's got a picture of James Grant on the front. You'll hear from him tonight. What his charges were and what he ended up 36 months of incarceration. He ended up serving 32 for good behavior in the First Step Act. He was actually out at 32 months. As I said, he went out and he was helping with the Trump campaign. But again, sentenced to 36 months for basically civil disorder and obstruction of a proceeding. On the back side is a gentleman, I'm not even going to list his name, got a picture of him, but he's an Antifa person who participated in the riots in Oregon back in 2021. He was released the next day and turned around and sued the town of Salem, Oregon for $25,000 to settle a lawsuit over excessive force against him by police. So that's a dichotomy of what you're dealing with here. January 6ers, politically motivated Trump supporters versus Antifa and what they are all about. Another one, I don't know if you're familiar with Congressman Morgan Griffith from, let's see, Ninth District. He puts out a weekly newsletter, and this one captured my interest because it has to do with, he really goes into a lot of detail about what happened on January 6th and how it was really brought together by Nancy Pelosi and corrupt Capitol Police officers. So again, take that, there's several copies of that there in the back. Any questions for me before I let James go ahead and talk about his story?
I mentioned this about 6 months ago, maybe longer. They put on a dog and pony show for the liberals, saying, well, the right created these riots, and they had the film footage that was doctored, so you only see part of it. And then there was never a counter, meaning the conservatives never put a counterpoint for 8 weeks or whatever it was, where they, at 8 o'clock in the evening, I think it ran to 10, the liberals had that slot, and they were making their arguments, but there was never an argument from the conservative side.
Are you talking about the January 6th Select Committee?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a Hollywood production, if you know. They did hire Hollywood to come in and help them to orchestrate that. And you're right, it was prime time because they wanted to get the maximum interest and viewership. But that was a completely slanted thing.
Where is the counter?
Well, there are people that are working on that. And I would say Representative Loudermilk is one of the strong ones. And I do believe we're going to get that story out. Now, unfortunately, they destroyed a lot of the documentation from the original January 6th Select Committee. It's harder to destroy things today than it was before, by the way. Digitally, it's harder to get rid of things. So I think we're going to see some more come out of that. But that's a great question.
Because years are going by.
Years are going by.
And to me, Trump hasn't done enough.
Well, Trump has a great opportunity right now. James and I were talking about this earlier. I think that we are going to see some things happen. Just today, I heard that at least 2 of the federal judges have stopped pursuing their cases right now, either pursuing trials or sentencing between now and January 20th because they know it's a waste of resources if Trump's going to go ahead and pardon these guys anyway. So that's very positive. But here's the other thing. The emotional and the economic toll that this has placed on breadwinners who were ripped out of their families and put behind bars for up to 3-4 years. How are we ever going to get those folks compensated and give them their lives back? Not only that, but lives that are lost. You cannot replace that. So those people are going to need our support and help going forward for sure. Anything else?
Why did not charge Pelosi? Because they asked her to help in January 6th, and she said no.
So Pelosi, I think, has gotten herself in trouble. If you recall, her daughter was on site on January 6th, filming her for posterity, I believe. And so there's that evidence as well as other things with the Capitol Police. There's a lot of really great work that's been done by somebody. His name is Tariq Johnson. He's a Capitol Police officer. He had the Trump ball cap on January 6th. Somebody gave it to him. He put it on, and he actually used it to move amongst the crowd and help to rescue certain police officers and so on. But he breaks down exactly what happened, the breakdown at the Capitol Police, and how Yogananda Pittman was the person who was in charge of getting intel to everyone on what was going on. They gave none of their people the intelligence, and that came right through Nancy Pelosi and the rest. So I don't think she's done. Now, I hope she sees her day as well.
Also, why they have a lot of Republicans in jail and not the Democrats? There's a lot of crooked Democrats.
I don't know about the difference. I would say probably a lot of people that went to January 6th were not political to some degree, right? There was a gentleman that was where Ashley Babbitt was killed. He was the guy that was breaking the window, Zachary Alam. He was Antifa. There were a lot of Antifa people that were there. Yeah. So some of them have had to face the music.
So what can we do to help?
That's a great question. Maybe while James is talking, I'll pull up some websites that I can share with you later. But one of them, it's on my list in the back. It's called Patriot Mail Project, and it is again a comprehensive list of all of the January 6ers, their families, little histories about them, their Give, Send, Go accounts, which is a way to help get them money. Letters are wonderful. They love to receive letters. It's a huge thing for them. Commissary help, or again, helping to support their families is really something that's very, very important. So that's one great one. You can go on to some other websites like forashley.com, which is the one that was created by Ashley's mother, Mickey Whitlock. As I said, she has those vigils outside of the DC jail every single night for over 840 nights now. So there are a lot of places that you can go to and help in some way. And I think just talking about it, that's what they wanted. Just like anything else that happens, right? The news cycle is a couple of weeks and people forget about it and you go on. But we said, no, January 6th, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to keep this alive. We're going to keep the pressure on because these are our fellow citizens. If they can do what they've done to them, they can do it to any one of us in this room. That's the thing we need to remember. So James, I'll let you introduce yourself then and go ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate being here. So if you can help me out real quick, I want to show up Tom. Can you help me out with a couple things here? I want to just show you a couple of shirts that I've been proudly wearing. It says, I would rather stand with God and be judged by the world than to stand with the world and be judged by God. And this is my favorite. My wife got this for me right before I went to prison. It says, if you bring up my past, you should know that Jesus dropped my charges. Yeah, thank you. So I got this today. Actually, just came in this week. My Trump 2024 hat and a new shirt. It says, Jesus is my savior, Trump is my president. As you can tell, I'm fearless. My wife doesn't want me to be in here right now. She's afraid that this will cause a whole lot to stir with the probation officer or get me in trouble, end up back in jail. But you can't silence my voice anymore. Trump won. We're not standing in fear. I'm not going to stand in fear. I'm not going to let anybody control my voice anymore. I've been silent way too long. It's time for people to know. So I was almost your chairman. Actually, I was your chairman for about a month. King George Tea Party chairman. And then about 2 weeks later, after I went to vacation, that's when, on the way home, that's when the FBI raided my house. So I wanted to share a little bit about, my story. I've got a lot of notes here, and I'll try to be a lot quicker than all these notes, but I want to just kind of share with you, why I got involved in all this. You guys remember 2020, 2019? We had all the churches burning. You had the Nation's Memorials, the peace. Ignore peaceful protests as the explosions, happened next door. And, this is a peaceful protest as the whole place burning down. Historical monuments, our statues are vandalized, they're ripped down. The police stood by and they watched. They were driven out by the mob. The mob burned churches, the American flag, and worse, they even had the nerve to burn God's word, the Bible. They burned it in the street and they mocked Jesus Christ and Christians. Remember seeing our brave police officers being attacked by Antifa, BLM thugs with frozen water bottles, metal pipes, other weapons, fireworks launched in their faces, police stations burning down, attempting to trap officers inside. The officers broke out, the officers had to back out and retreat from the mob, trying to throw Molotov cocktails and destroy the police cars, staying on top of them, breaking out windows and painting with ACAB. All cops are what the rest is. Little pumps on foot screws and bicycles intimidated our officers and rode circles around them. Our state governor should have rolled out heavy SWAT armored trucks and brought in the National Guard immediately, but instead they joined in the BLM parade and supporting politicians like AOC and Kamala Harris, Tim Walz bailed out the rioters. Other states, California, Minnesota, Illinois, and our great Virginia, released criminal murders and drug dealers while locking up Christians and patriots for singing our hymns and our national anthems in the streets or in the churches during the fake COVID scare. So while thousands marched to these BLM rallies, strip clubs, bars, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, all the big stores were open for business. All the small businesses were closed and many were driven into bankruptcy. In Virginia, we had Governor Ralph Northam also threatening Christians and pastors who went to church during COVID, threatening small businesses staying open. He let statues and historical monuments be vandalized, torn down, or removed. He was pushing for babies to be aborted in the 9th month or even after they were born, sacrificing our future children to Moloch, Asher, and Baal. They let all of Richmond turn into a drug slum, vandalized and abandoned, controlled by thugs, where you can't even attend a concert without risking your life. What really got us all fired up was when Ralph Northam went after our Second Amendment rights. You guys remember that, especially my fellow veterans. He pushed for the radical red flags laws. That's when I joined the Virginia Citizens Defense League, and we got King George County and our sheriff to join 99% of Virginia counties and sheriff to stand against Ralph Northam, even against his use of the State Highway Patrol and our Virginia National Guard to protect the citizens of King George, Virginia, and our Second Amendment rights. Our King George sheriff was ready to go up against the State Highway Patrol and our National Guard. Think about that, what that would have looked like. Citizens and our sheriff going against the state and the National Guard. It's unbelievable. I can't even imagine what it would have been like. But we didn't face it because our sheriff and our county stood strong. So when I attended the VCL rally in 2020, thousands of Virginia patriots shouted down Governor Ralph Northam's tyranny. They had snipers on top of the buildings for us. They did everything they could to prevent anyone attending the rally. But after the rally was over, buses were still showing up with patriots who stood in long lines for hours waiting to get on the bus to get to that rally from that huge parking lot out in the middle of nowhere, nowhere close to downtown Richmond. So the best part was the responsible governor. When the governors, the Northam vilified, we picked up the trash all over the Richmond from our rally, even going so far as to peel the orange VCDL stickers everyone wore off the pavement. We even picked up trash left over from the BLM rally the week before. That's because Virginia patriots, we care about Virginia and we care about America. So I joined the campaign for President Trump, Congressman Rob Whitman, and Senator Amanda Chase. So in 2020, member of Virginia Senator Amanda Chase, she was AKA Trump in heels. She put her hat in for Virginia governor, but because she supported President Trump and VCDL, the Democrat-controlled House and Senate prevented her from making a Virginia governor candidate announcement from the conference room. It made her scramble up to the speakers, find speakers, and then take the campaign outside. That was the moment I joined Veteran for Amanda Chase, Veterans for Rob Whitman, and Veterans for President Trump. I was in charge of 3 campaigns. I went to the gun shows, I went to other campaign events. I helped Senator Chase with the database of voters. I took the skills I learned as a Marine Corps military police officer, active duty field artillery in the Army, and a light duty as personal security specialist for Battalion S2. So all the skills I learned while working as a GS-12 DoD security specialist at the Pentagon and then in Dahlgren, I applied them to the campaign management for all 3 campaigns, all the way up to Virginia primary in 2020 election where I served as a Republican vote monitor. So I was active in campaigns, I was active in protecting our vote, to making sure it wasn't stolen. So when I was serving the Amanda Chase Whitman Trump campaign, I started attending the King George Republican Party. You might remember that was the King George Tea Party we followed it. Both were held at the post of my American Legion, Post 89. That's when I met James Hall, the King George Tea Party chair at the time, for up to 7 years he served. And then he was transferred overseas, so we were looking for someone to take that position. Unfortunately, no one signed up. We looked around the room and no one signed up. And so I would later get to meet Bob Keeler. He was another chairman of the Sister Tea Party, and he would fill in for James Hall. So it'd be around January 6, 2021 to around July 2021, I'd pick up the mantle of the King George Tea Party chairman. I attended the Tea Party Summit in Richmond. I met Virginia Tea Party Chairman Nelson Velez and Lieutenant Governor Winston Sears, who was running for the position at the time. After that, I went on a 2-week vacation to see my wife's in-laws, or my in-laws, her parents. That's when we headed back to Virginia for a short 3-day romantic stop in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, where I planned to attend the Hatfield McCoy's and Pirates Voyage Dinner Theater, spend some time with my wife in the pool in our private hot tub in the cabin. I was making plans that morning, where to go for breakfast. I missed a call. This is the FBI. You need to call us back immediately. I laughed. I thought it was a joke, a prank from one of my vet friends. And after I got out of the shower, my wife tells me I missed another call. Same voicemail. Okay. My wife got a call from her boss from the King George Sheriff, wanting to know where we were on our vacation, Illinois or Tennessee. And both Christy and I thought that was odd because we're good friends with the King George Sheriff. He knew exactly where we were. He and his deputies were watching our house while we were going on vacation. He even told the FBI they're on vacation and not due back for them until next week. But the FBI ordered him away from our home. Go guard those neighborhood roads like we told you. We got this. The FBI raided my home July 27, 2021, just weeks after I became the chairman of King George Tea Party. Coincidence? I think not. So at 0550 hours on July 27, 2021, the FBI woke up my entire neighborhood with their arrest announcements on the loudspeakers. And passing by my 2 statues of the combat soldiers, which are American flag holders, they raided my home, destroying my front porch rails and bending my metal front door like a pretzel with a vehicle Ram Bearcat. That's like a MRAP with a Ram on the front. They ripped off my side garage door, threw flashbangs and smoke grenades in my home, terrifying my 15-year-old cat. They proceeded to trash my home, ramming and damaging every door to our bedroom and closets, knocking down our shower curtain rod. They opened up every drawer in the kitchen bathroom and our dressers and dumped everything into a pile in those rooms. They emptied the boxes of cat litter and bags of cat food on the floor. They emptied all of our moving boxes, dumped stuff in the piles. They trashed my office, knocking off my headquarters, Department of the Army, Pentagon plaques, and combat memorabilia, Pentagon and military coin collection, all swept off my desk. All the patriotic and Christian decorations off the walls, torn down. Then they emptied my filing cabinet and desk, placing all those important documents and tax bank records and all the other papers they could find in a pile, and buried my internet router. That was on the ground. They put my hunting clothes on top of those papers in the router. So that was extremely hot with no air circulation. Had I not been released and gotten home when I did, I would have come home to a burnt-out charred remains of where my home used to be. They emptied all the closets and dressers onto our beds and tossed everywhere in the room. But worst of all, we opened up my wrapped anniversary present to my wife and stomped in the lingerie. My wife said that was the worst. She felt like she had been violated. After they destroyed my home, they laid out their prizes for a photo op. They would later use in my court case the Virginia Proud Boys shirt and hat, the Trump shirts and hat and flags and all the hunting clothes and all my weapons and ammo. Look at this arsenal. We stopped a radical white supremacist domestic terrorist. I was such a terrorist that they didn't take one gun, not even one bullet. Does that make sense? And yes, I had a lot of weapons and ammo. I love to hunt. I shoot targets. I love to hang out with my veteran friends and do range therapy. It's my God-given Second Amendment right that they've stolen from me from permanently. I only get it back with the presidential pardon. I don't have my voting rights. I didn't get to vote in this election. I actually talked to Virginia the election restoration office, and they actually apologized to me and said, there's no way, especially this was the same time that the DOJ was suing the Virginia governor to have all those legals put back on. And the Virginia Governor Restoration Office had to tell me, unfortunately, we have to obey the law, and you're still, unfortunately, a felon until September 2026. And we can't give you your voting rights back, even though there's no reason you shouldn't have lost your voting rights to begin with. So the most important election in our United States history, I was not allowed to vote. Just think about that. That tore me up, I think more than anything. So they took away my God-given Second Amendment right. The items they took was one walking stick, one old laptop, one day computer, and 2 blank thumb drives. They had a warrant for my phone, which they made my wife and I drive all day until midnight from Tennessee and turn it into them directly. Thankfully, because the attorney I called, they negotiated that I could stay with my diabetic, asthmatic wife, who has severe migraines and is a kidney transplant patient. So instead of turning myself in, oh, and she was also wearing a boot on her leg because her Achilles heel, and that's what she was driving. She's the only driver in our household. My narcolepsy and temporary paralysis prevents me from driving since 2002. So instead of turning myself in to the FBI at Tennessee or them raiding my hotel room, thanks to my attorney, they allowed me to drive back to Virginia immediately, turning myself in at midnight. When we arrived in Virginia, I had to turn myself into the FBI in DC that next morning. So when I arrived in Virginia, they told us to meet in Central Park, back behind the building, barely lit parking, couldn't see anything, drive past the 2 state highway patrol vehicles, then park. They saw I was using 2 canes and really needed a walker or a wheelchair to be able to walk, but they made me walk the rest of the parking lot to their car. That was further than that front door. And I walked 1 step at a time. And so they saw me using 2 canes and they made me walk the rest of the parking lot to their car and then walk back. I fell a couple times, they didn't help me. I moved 1 step at a time, barely able to walk. And the next morning, that narcolepsy with temporary paralysis was worse. The FBI agent, my wife, had to help me get out of the car and help me into his. When we got into our first processing station, the FBI agent didn't even handcuff me because I needed my arms and hands to be able to hold on to the 2 canes that I was using to walk. A step, rest, and then walk the next step. Every officer was shaking their heads saying, this is such a crime that this guy is being treated this way. A veteran, a combat veteran, a patriot. But because of January 6, 2021, he didn't even assault an officer or go into the Capitol. He collapsed between the officer having a seizure. This isn't right. You take your time, sweetie. We're in no rush. That's what the female officer said. Every processing section, it was the same response. But when I got to DC Alcatraz, the DC federal jail or whatever they call it, it was, it looked like Alcatraz. I mean, there was like literally an open sewer that ran out the back. They gave us a sandwich that they had to scrape the cockroaches off before they gave it to us. Stale bread and a piece of meat. Looked like it was green. You know, probably the food that would make you sick. I didn't eat it. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to starve or go on prayer and fasting because I'm not eating this stuff. So yeah, that's when I got to DC Alcatraz. They treated me worse than dirt. They were ignored. I was ignored by the guards when I fell off the metal bed. I had a seizure in my cell. But that's okay. You know, Jesus' angels lifted me above all the cockroaches in the cold concrete floor. It dragged me to this station and then had my interview, and the judge had no sympathy. He said if it wasn't for your medical condition, the prosecution and defense attorney's agreement, you'd be staying here until your trial instead of going home after only 5 hours in jail. I hope the judge throws a book at you. So I have some copy of my complaint and statement of facts and all that, and I don't know if you guys can see these or not, but this is one of the pictures they took. I was having a good morning. I was walking. So I have this popsicle cane, as you can see, and when I was in the metro, it broke. So I was using a stick that was a flagpole, and we took the flag off of it, and I used that for my cane. Here I am with my Marine Corps hat. Oops, lose my papers here. Here I am with my Marine Corps hat, and my skull, which was just actually from, grunt style. But they're like, oh, look, here's a skull guy. There's a Marine Corps cap. Here I am in front of the officers. I had the stick up in my hand, I was holding it. And then they also took a picture red flag gun control law approved by Virginia, and I was standing proudly holding my personal American flag that I have from my home. I brought it to Richmond for the Amanda Chase's rally or one of the VCL rallies. But I was standing in front of the Richmond Capitol with the flag, and that was right after we sang the national anthem at the Capitol. And somebody had taken this picture and posted it in a newspaper, and they grabbed that because, well, look, here he is holding that American flag. How dare he? And then they took a picture of us, climbing up the little half circle step. If you look in the videos, first I want to point off if you look at the video at the Trump rally at 2 p.m. Somebody says, "Hey, Trump's still speaking. It's 2 p.m. We need to get these people out of here. We need to get them to the Capitol, or this thing's not going to work." Yeah, this wasn't staged at all. Trump was actually supposed to speak at the Capitol. Owen Shore InfoWars had a permission to actually had a stand set up with speakers. They also had porta potties. Those were on all that was on the Capitol grounds. Well, you can't put that there without a Capitol ground permit. All of a sudden, the permit expired after the Trump rally, and they weren't allowed to go there. And yet we did go there, and then, then they threw Owen Shroyer in jail because he incited things. It's just unreal. I can't believe how this has all happened. But so the police actually were told, I was watching the videos, the officer told the senior officer told the junior officer, "Do not throw that tear gas. The wind's blowing this way. It's going to blow right back on us." And sure enough, they did. So the police lines kind of faded out because the people were choking on tear gas. Their officers were, and so that's how I went from all the way in the back to all the way in the front. But let me explain how I even got up there first. I was at the back, the reflecting pool. We heard a Vietnam veteran was down in the tear gas, and that's why I ran up the hill. And I got into the crowd, and I got disoriented. PTSD kicked in from combat, and all of a sudden I was standing in front of an officer yelling at him. But before that, I was at the back of the reflecting pool, way down at the bottom of the Lower West Terrace, way past the reflecting pool, and we were watching people pray. We were watching people singing the national anthem, and that's when the officers fired the tear gas and the flashbangs and the rubber bullets. And that's when the crowd got angry, and rightfully so. And when I saw a woman who was asking the police for help get pushed down 3 flights of stairs, that made me angry. And so I did go up to the officer and what was all that about? Can't you treat people like a human? And then I went up to another officer, and that's where you see this, is where we're up in the front, and they see me stepping up on the half circle. They're like, "Look how aggressive he is." No, I'm actually getting pushed by the crowd. There is no way if I stood there and didn't go up the step, I'd be crushed. And I told him that. Well, then I pointed to my Marine Corps hat, and I'm like, I said some cuss words, and I've never disrespected an officer. I was a military police officer. I have much respect for officers. So I said a cuss word. I'm like, "What the F are you doing? This is not right. Tear gas, flashbangs, rubber bullets. You just indiscriminately into a crowd, and you're hurting people and injuring women and old men. And for what? What are you doing this for? We didn't do anything against you." And then I'm talking to the officer, and I'm actually apologizing because I realized, hey, there's 100,000 people in here, and there's not many of you. And about that same time, some of the Antifa people launched some bear spray, and somebody grabbed one of the canisters the police had of tear gas or CS gas, and they sprayed right at the officers, and I happened to catch all that with the officer. And so you actually see me talking to the officer, my hand on his shoulder because I'm having trouble standing. And then you see the officer looks like he's grabbing a hold of me. Yeah, he's trying to grab a hold of me because I'm going down. That's not because I'm being aggressive. And you see him getting ready to spray me, and then you realize no, he's actually choking. And you see me actually, trying to speak to the officer. This is his body cam footage. And then the last thing you see is my cover before I fall between his legs. What the prosecution never wanted to show you, which I'll happily show you, is a report from, this was from, I'm trying to think. That was, I don't remember which, this is Capitol Hill Police ignore body of Trump supporter either unconscious or dead outside the Capitol building on January 6, 2021. Is what the title of this statement was, and I forget what paper put this out or website, but it's actually me being lifted up by 3 different patriots. I was unconscious for 30 minutes. I was trampled on. The officers couldn't do anything because they were being pushed up the stairs. So one of them said, "We need to grab him." And went, "We can't keep him safe. We can't even keep ourselves safe." So I felt for the officers. And the thing is, I was unconscious, but I could hear everything. I couldn't respond. I was temporarily paralyzed. And that's the condition I was. That's the condition I was in for 30 minutes until Patriots got me, did CPR and got me breathing again, and then firemen carried me out of the Capitol area to the park. So I did the Give, Send, Go, and I just want to share a few things from this. I think it was really awesome because, I wasn't walking with Christ at the time. At 13 years, I walked away in anger since 9/11, and my medical issues, my wife's medical issues. So that was kind of where I found myself, full of pride and anger on January 6th, and walking away from the Lord. So I didn't have that spiritual wisdom and discernment to see what was going on. And so some of the things I recognized here is for this Give, Send, Go campaign, I said, James Davis, a sinner who was saved by the mercy and grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, an OIF combat wounded veteran needs to raise at least $25,000 for attorney fees and other court expenses. Ended up, total was $28,000. My wife and I looked underneath the bed. We knew we had a little bit of change, a couple bottles of change or something. We ended up having over $5,000 in change that the Holy Spirit put underneath that bed for us to find. That's impossible. We didn't have that much. God's provisions, people. That's how I got through this. So I was charged with a felony, several misdemeanor charges. They tried to get me on assaulting an officer. Matter of fact, here, I think, this is all my charges. It said obstructing law enforcement during civil disorder, felony assaulting, resisting, impeding certain officers, assaulting an officer, entering and remaining in restricted buildings or grounds, disorderly disruptive conduct in restricted building or grounds, engaging in physical violence in restricted building or grounds, disorderly conduct in a Capitol building, act of physical violence in the Capitol buildings or grounds, and none of that which I did. As far as the area that they said was all roped off, by the time I got there at 2:30, there was nothing roped off. It was all removed by other people who wanted us to go into that grass area that was apparently restricted. But we didn't know that because it's all ripped down. So they charged me several misdemeanor charges. I had to have a $5,000 retainer fee, agreed to the required $25,000 flat rate for the attorney. So I said, this is James Combat, wounded exposed from OAF, Kuwait, Iraq in March 2002, left with severe disabling narcolepsy and temporary paralysis, mobility issues, severe disabling sleep apnea, arthritis, TBI, PTS, temporal lobe seizures, cognitive decline, short-term memory loss, and other unknown neurological disorders. So due to my severe medical disabilities, I've been medically retired from the federal government, and only by the grace of God did I have the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which took me from basically a wheelchair, permanently in a wheelchair, to being able to walk with a cane. And so I use a collapsible cane, and I've been doing that since 2019. Let's fast forward here. So I was walking with that cane, and even in rare cases running, as I ran up the hill on January 6th, just by adrenaline basically, and trying to go save somebody. The video shows me collapsing into a police officer running up the grass hill, after running up the grass hill, into that cloud of tear gas and mass confusion. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm trying to repeat some of this, so I apologize and skip down. So I was literally in that crowd for less than 5 minutes. So in less than 5 minutes, I went from a GS-12 DoD security specialist, retired, at the Pentagon in Dahlgren, to a federal felon. In less than 5 minutes. I've never had a single mark on my record, ever. I've been a patriot, a law-abiding citizen. In less than 5 minutes, I'm a felon. But you can see a lifeless body of myself, collapsed in a temporary paralysis state, being rescued by Trump supporters. Unfortunately, the police and tactical retreat for gun safety, not able to provide first aid. I left the group, the Virginia Proud Boys, which I'll tell you, the Virginia Proud Boys thing. I got up there with these different campaigns, and I'm using a cane, and no one knows my medical issues. And I'm like, what happens if something happens to me? No one's going to know. My wife didn't even know I was up there because I didn't tell her I was up there. So nobody's going to be able to help me. And I saw these veterans, and I'm like, can I ride with you guys, basically? And that's how I got involved with them. And the guys that I was with, they actually protected police officers from Antifa and BLM. We actually stopped a guy that threw a skateboard at an officer and knocked her over. And we went over to the officer, picked her up, surrounded her, prevented all these gangs from coming in and attacking her, slammed the other kids against the wall that were trying to cause this disturbance, waited for the police to arrive, and then they took charge. And we, on the way back home, around late midnight, we got back to the Metro, the last car, or the last Metro train, whatever it was, and an officer stops us and says, are you part of these Virginia Proud Boys? And we're like, uh-oh, yes. And he's like, I want to thank you for what you did for us. They heard all the way down in Springfield. He wasn't even up there. They just heard it through the grapevine. So the Virginia Proud Boys are not a white supremacist terrorist group. They are actually people that were patriots, protecting officers, protecting patriots that were walking from the Trump rallies. They would have to walk through Black Lives Matter alley, through BLM, Antifa, while the two officers stood on one side of the street and on the other side of the street, making the patriots walk through this gauntlet without any protection. And we stood up and we went and took care of business. And we actually sometimes even helped push the police forward as the Antifa and BLM were actually pushing them back. We pushed the police forward so they could hold their ground. That's the kind of people we were. We actually shouted, back the blue. So do you think we went to the Capitol to fight the cops? No, we didn't. I've got a lot more, so if I have to wrap up, I can do so. I want to share real quick, that God did bring me back to Him. I returned to Broken Prodigal Son in April 2021. It was July of 2021 when I got arrested, so literally God prepared me for what I was about to face, this hurricane of a storm. To fast forward, what He did, took the guy from full of anger and pride, and the guy that was facing all this, He made this guy who never really had a prayer life, never really been into Bible study or anything, I was, within a few months, God made me a Bible study leader, a prayer leader, and then I was sharing Jesus across the world, and still am sharing Jesus across the world with different ministries. I lead 2 different Bible studies, and I've really turned my focus from politics and things I can't control to what God can control, which is, this government, the election, that was all in God's hands. Even the 2020 election that was stolen from us, it was still in God's hands. He wanted to use the corrupt politicians to wake up America. I truly believe that. Because we were living in complacency. And so we've gone through what we've gone through so God could wake up America. Look at all the American patriots and the Christians that stepped up for this election. We woke up. We're standing for Christ. We're not letting people in their woke ideals of LGBTQ, abortion, and child mutilation. We're not letting them run the show anymore. We're not letting drag queens story hour run our schools anymore. We're taking back everything for God. We're taking back everything for Jesus Christ. And I've got a lot more to share, and I've got articles that I've actually written, several articles I've actually written for our Christian Friends newsletter that I can share with you if you want me to send them to you on email. I can do so. But let me quickly share with you what prison was like, because I think you'll be just astounded at what that was like for me. So I go up there using a walker, and I don't even make it 10 feet or 10 steps into the prison after I kiss my wife goodbye, and I collapse. And I'm permanently in a wheelchair the whole entire time I was in prison. I had multiple seizures so many times that they had to send me to a hospital. I can't even describe what the hospital was like, because I had to sit in the ER for 36 hours. They were overstaffed. They were overrun with people and had hardly any staff. And so they had me sitting in, picture Hannibal Lecter, basically. I had a chain around my waist. The handcuffs were like this, so it was literally tied to my chest, to my stomach area. And then I was sitting in a wheelchair, and then the kind nurses would come out and bring us food while we're sitting there waiting for 36 hours. And this whole entire ER, just imagine that, everybody's kind of staring at you in an orange jumpsuit. And I'm having to, the guards would not help me. I had to undo a carton of milk and lift it with my knees and tilt my head back to drink it. And then same with the food. I basically was like a dog trying to eat something off a plate. And then when I finally got to a room, they tried to put my hands in handcuffs attached to the bed, along with a chain that went around my legs attached to the bed, like a dog chain. That's about how heavy it was. Like a thick dog chain like you'd use on a Rottweiler or something. That was attached to the bed. So when I had seizures, I literally would fall out of bed, and I would collapse, and I was underneath the bed, and they had to drag me from underneath the bed and try to get me back on the bed. And then when they would take me to the emergency room because I had stopped breathing and was having problems, they would put me back in this, cuffs and put me back in this, chair, and then they bring me back, and so I stayed that way for a month. But the worst thing of all of those is when FCI Laredo, their medical officer,
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. It's
Okay.
like we have one of the prisoners that are calling, and
Okay.
we have to take the call.
Okay, sure.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. But they didn't let my attorney or my wife know where I was. She didn't even talk to me until a month later. when she finally came to pick me up, that's when she found out where I was.
Hey, Bon's getting around.
Thank you. I apologize for thank you so much.
Thank you, James. Can I get the,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, no worries.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So James, are you there?
Hey, yes, I'm here.
All right, so everyone, this is James Grant, who was a January 6th prisoner that I got to know when he was in the Northern Neck Regional Jail. And James, you're in front of the King George Tea Party right now, and I got you on the speaker so folks can hear you. Go ahead and start.
Hey, how's everyone doing? It's great to be in front of a conservative organization. We definitely need more of those. And yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting Tom when I was at what is kind of known as the worst jail in the country, in Northern Neck Regional Jail. So a little bit about my situation was that, of course, I was at January 6th. I was actually at the front, literally right next to Ray Epps. And, you know, I heard what he said and everything. But I pushed the fence. And for pushing that fence, I was charged with assault with a deadly weapon. It's similar because there's so much nonsense. So the fence didn't touch anyone. It was at trial that they admitted the part of the bike rack that I pushed didn't touch anyone. And, you know, I don't know if Tom has told you guys, but before January 6th, I had plans to be in law school. I had pretty much a full scholarship to the University of Alabama School of Law, and I had another one that I turned down from Washington and Lee up there in Virginia. Both great schools. And, you know, I graduated with honors in political science over at NC State University. And so, yeah, this has absolutely grown my life. I served about 3 years. I just got out last month. Yeah, I went to trial. I was found not guilty, even in D.C. This should show you how overblown and nonsensical my charges were. I was acquitted of 5 of 9 charges in D.C. And I think if I had the fortune to be charged in Virginia, I would have beaten even more of that. But no, I pushed the fence that didn't touch anyone, and I trespassed. And the prosecution was asking for 9 years at sentencing for that. And what's funny is my original indictment literally didn't even have assault on it, because pushing the fence is not assault. But they added assault later when they realized, regarding January 6 cases, that they could get whatever they asked for. So they upped it to assault, and, you know, no one was going to object to that. The frenzy for January 6th was out of control. And, you know, they told lies at the beginning, really important, fundamental lies about January 6th, like that, and I know so many people here have heard this, but when January 6th first happened, we all thought, you know, they made it out like so many police had died that day, like multiple, like they stormed the building and killed multiple cops. And I was just watching the debate, actually both debates, the one with Biden and the one with Kamala Harris, and they both mentioned that people died, that police officers were killed, which is, like I said, that's a fundamental mistruth. When Oliver North was tried, I think in the 80s, I don't know if it carried over the 90s, I believe it was the 80s with Reagan, but they said he couldn't be tried in the United States because he couldn't get a fair trial anywhere. But, you know, I don't know how January 6ers were ever going to get a fair trial. You know, in the city where it happened, with really biased judges, and it's not just the judges, you know, there's juries, probation officers, and then the lawyers. My first lawyer, who lives right outside of D.C., was in Silver Springs, and I called this man, Peter Cooper. I called him 40, and that's being conservative. That's a really conservative estimate. I must have called this guy 40 plus times from jail. He didn't answer a single call, not one of them. In 13 months, I saw him twice. And we got to a point where my trial was less than a month away, and we had not discussed the case at all. I eventually had to ask for new representation. But it's just more to the point that, you know, it wasn't fair on so many levels. And then, you know, I went inside the building and took selfies and left. And in my pre-sentence report that they do a report before your sentencing, they added, they wrote down that James Grant stormed the halls. I mean, I literally walked around. So it's not just the judges that were biased. I mean, there's so many people and there's so many steps of the way, from the lawyers to the judges to the probation officers to the juries. And, you know, it was 93% for Kamala Harris. So, you know, a lot of the weaponization and the lawfare that they used against Trump, you know, they did a trial run with the January 6ers, but my life has been absolutely demolished. It's been destroyed. My name has been ran through the mud. I lost 3 years of my youth, and you know, I almost can't apply for a job the normal way. I have to network with people and explain my situation, because my background check is because I went to trial, and you know, I was acquitted of 5 charges, but I was found guilty on 4 non-sex charges. Those show up on my background check. So my background check has more charges, being that I didn't take a plea. It even kind of looks worse. But yeah, no, and the pretrial conditions, and that's again how I met Tom. The pretrial conditions I went through were absurd. I mean, Northern Neck, the food portions, you starve there. The food portions are not enough for an elementary school student. The commissary that you can buy is so expensive. It's like $1. It was $1.35 when I last left for a 10-cent ramen noodle. So I mean, people just starve. The mats, it's like you're sleeping on steel. The guards have no, you know, they don't respect you at all. They're a bunch of kids that don't. I mean, that place was a nightmare. And then I was housed in USP Lewisburg in a pretrial unit. So they dragged us over to an actual prison. And it just highlights how absurd it was having non-criminals in a maximum security federal prison. And there was like 15, 20 J6ers there. And at one point, when I was one of the last J6ers to leave there, as I was at Northern Neck, but it just highlighted itself so poorly, and it just, you could tell these people weren't supposed to be in jail. At one point, I mean, there was someone who had child abuse, child sex charges, and they wanted me to cell with him. The guards were trying to make me cell with him, which they really usually don't do, but they tried to make me cell with him, and I said, no, I'm not doing that. And well, I called my lawyer first, and he told me to tell them you're not comfortable with it. There's civil liability if he does have a seizure, and you don't do anything his family can sue. So just tell him you're not comfortable with it, and give them my phone number, so I did. I gave the guard on duty my lawyer's phone number. I said, hey, I'm not comfortable with that. The next thing I know, I was dragged out of the shower. They said, put some clothes on. They handcuffed me and threw all my stuff out practically. And they took me down to solitary confinement for a couple of days. I was taken to special housing for refusing that request. And, you know, if you raise concerns to the guards, they would just destroy your room in a quote-unquote search. And, of course, the D.C. Gulag. I was there for about a year, and I think enough has been said about the D.C. Gulag. Suffice to say that the higher-ups hated us. I mean, you had the most Democrat, leftist, DEI staff that you've ever seen. And they really hated us. And from what I'm hearing now, they were able to finally integrate the pod. Originally, it was just January 6ers, which was a godsend. But I guess lately, the numbers have dwindled enough that they've gone ahead and put other inmates in there. And if anyone doesn't know anything about D.C., it is the worst. The D.C. jail is one of the worst jails in the country. I mean, it is just wide open. It is crazy. The guards do not care as long as you're not. I mean, they throw. I don't even want to get into it, but they will have no problem stabbing a guard or throwing, feces on guards. That place is such a nightmare, the DC jail. So, you know, the pretrial conditions I went through were terrible. I'm looking for an attorney now for what the media has done to me. But I went to trial, right? I went to trial. I was acquitted of most of my charges, and I defy anyone to find in any mainstream news article anywhere that they list that I was found not guilty of most of my charges. They do not even mention this fact. They just choose to focus on the fact that I was found guilty of pushing the fence, that assault with a deadly weapon, which is ridiculous in and of itself. But they choose to completely ignore that. You will not find it in any media article. And one I found accused me of charges I was acquitted of. So I'm looking into getting an attorney for that. But it's just absolutely ridiculous what they've done to us on so many fronts. From taking precious years of our youth, but even more importantly, running our names into the ground. I mean, Biden called us white supremacists. I personally know several black and Hispanic January 6ers, but it's a complete lie, and I don't know how any of us could get our lives back after this. But I think my example is one of the better examples of why every J6er needs to be pardoned, because according to my charge, it's a violent charge for pushing a fence that didn't touch anyone. I was given a 20-year charge of assault with a deadly weapon. I actually had 2 of those charges, and then I had the official obstruction of an official proceeding that President Trump had, and then they added on assault with a deadly weapon to 3 other charges. So all told, when I went to trial, if I was convicted on everything, the maximum sentence would have been 101 years for pushing a fence and trespassing. It's madness in the whole. I'm really thankful to be out. And, I actually was able to get a job door knocking for President Trump with Patriots Grassroots. I kind of networked my way in. And so I knocked doors, and I knocked over 2,000 doors for President Trump with Patriot Grassroots over 2 weeks. And, that's just the thing that's driving me, is that there are so many people still in jail. And when I tell this to people, they don't understand the scope and the severity of January 6th and how badly these people are being treated. There is a man named Reed Christensen, and he is the loveliest man you'll ever meet. He's a patriot. He's over 7 years old. He suffered several strokes, including, I believe, at least one, if not 2 in custody. I'm not positive on that. And he's the most harmless old man. And I believe he had a similar situation to me. He shook a fence, and they gave him 3 or 4 years. He's in federal prison right now. And he's just the kindest man you could ever meet. And, he's in there for 3 years. And there's another patriot named David Dempsey. He was given 20 years for 20 years for an assault where the police showed up for work the next day. So as horrible as my situation is, as absurd as it is, I mean, there's even more egregious examples, but I like to think I'm an example of why everyone needs a pardon. I mean, the cops, they charge people that, like I said, here are some of the items that the DC courts have ruled are deadly weapons. Right on the fence is an assault with a deadly weapon. A water bottle is a deadly weapon that merits the 20-year charge of assault with a deadly weapon. A traffic cone is another charge that was charged with assault with a deadly weapon. A traffic cone, I mean, it literally has the word safety in it, like a safety cone. Was ruled a deadly weapon. So, I mean, that's absurd. That's a 20-year charge. And these are people that don't have any criminal history for the most part. And they're getting these absurd years-long sentences for, like Tom said, what would usually be a trip to the magistrate and you go home. And the reason I think they've gotten away with throwing the book at it so hard is because of that lie that cops died. And Winston Churchill said the truth, by the time a lie gets halfway around the world, the truth is still getting its pants on. Right. And it's so true regarding January 6th.
Hey, listen, we've got the DC Gulag calling us at roughly 10 on, so whatever, when that comes in, I'm going to cut you off, and just so you know that, okay?
It's 10 on that.
Yeah, I know, so it could be any second.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Yeah, no, so, I mean, just it's absurd. They hid evidence from me. I stopped people from breaking windows at one point. We could never find that evidence for trial. It would have helped exonerate me. So I'm out here advocating as much as I can for the January 6ers and for my friends that are still in jail. I just think more people need to be informed, and they've gotten away with so much because of that, the lie they told in the beginning, that all these cops died. So the outrage was there, but it was based on a lie, and they used that to ruin, so many Patriots' lives. I'm hoping to go to law school when this is over. I just submitted to Pardon 47 my pardon paperwork yesterday. So I'm hoping to hear back. And I do think President Trump, I fully believe he will pardon everybody, but the stakes are too high, and we've got to make sure he pardons everybody on the first go. I think as long as you're not, a Fed or a cooperator, I think everyone needs a pardon. The things that they've called, assault with a deadly weapon, or just even assault. I mean, guys in full riot gear, and I don't think. Well, I don't have the video. Well, I do have the video, but it's going to be hard to show. But literally, right at the beginning of January 6th, I was trying to pull someone off of a cop, and a cop ran in and full sprint sucker punched me in the face, like a brutal punch. And I think that it's really indicative of how the police were the whole day. And Patriots died that day, and most people don't know that. So I just think we have to educate people, January 6th.
James, you're
And,
right.
yeah.
Your call's coming in, but.
Okay, well, look, thank you guys. I want to thank the King George Tea Party. Thank you guys for all you're doing. Thank you guys.
This is a prepaid call from
Dominic Fox.
an inmate at the Washington, D.C.
You're gonna enjoy Dominic.
Call, press 0 to refuse this call. Your current balance is $37.81. This call is from a correction facility and is subject to monitoring and recording. Thank you for using Global Tellink.
Hello.
Dominic, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing very well. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, hey, I want to say a special thank you to Tom for having me tonight. Hello to the King George Tea Party. And a special thank you to James Davis. It's not often that I get to talk to a fellow persecuted patriot outside of the DC DOC. But it sounds like you had some additionally unfortunate run-ins with our weaponized Department of Justice. So I tip my hat to you, and thank you, Tom, for having me out here tonight.
He tipped his hat back to you, so thank you.
Awesome. Well, guys, like I said, my name's Dominic Fox. I call Savannah, Georgia home, and I'm excited to be talking to a Tea Party organization tonight because I actually got my start in grassroots activism attending the Washington County Tea Party meeting in Fayetteville, Arkansas, back when I was a part of the Ron Paul presidential campaign in 2008 and 2012. So if it weren't for those incredible people and that incredible example of what can happen with grassroots activism, I don't want to say I probably wouldn't be sitting here today, but I certainly wouldn't be as active and involved in politics as I am today. So it's great that you guys are continuing to meet and carrying on a great tradition of truly, what it means to be an activist, and that's organizing locally, having meetings, getting out and meeting people in your community, and then inviting speakers to talk. So it's an honor to be talking to you guys tonight. And just to tell you a little bit briefly about my story, there's a lot of guys in here right now. I'm actually, I am the only, I have a unique distinction, I think, of being the only J6 hostage currently being detained with absolutely no violent charges. I was picked up about 14 months ago, and I was initially charged with 4 misdemeanor offenses that a lot of people get. I had a press pass from the Trump campaign in 2020. I traveled around to multiple rallies and events. I covered the situation at the border, at the U.S.-Mexico border.
Uh-oh.
Is that $37 gone?
I hope not.
I'll be on the intro.
He's still on there, so sometimes this happens. It could be any number of things. It might be, battery died on his tablet. It could be any number of things. So the call's still active.
Where's he calling from?
He's inside the DC jail.
What's James' last name?
This is Dominic Fox, B-O-X. Well,
Thank you for using Global Tellink.
I guess we'll hope that he calls back. So the whole point of this was he was going to lead us in the national anthem with the gentleman inside the jail. So we've got a few minutes here to maybe reconnect.
Can I say a couple things real quick?
Yeah, James.
So, sorry, I didn't realize my time was running that short. But I want to tell you 2 quick things. First of all, the prosecution really wanted to give me a misdemeanor. The DOJ require the prosecution to give me a federal felony. The DOJ wanted 8 months in prison. Actually, they wanted 5 years. Actually, what they really wanted was to put me with the rest of Virginia Proud Boys with 20 years. But they got their 8 years. They wanted eight months in prison. I mean, the federal judge, after hearing my testimony, that's when he gave me 2 months in prison and 6 months home confinement. But I just find that odd. That the prosecution wanted to give me a misdemeanor. The DOJ required the felony. The DOJ required 8 months in prison, despite my medical condition.
49 cents.
So we're still
This
good.
call is from a correction facility and is subject to monitoring and recording. Thank you for using Global Telling.
Hey guys, sorry about that. Anytime you start talking, it's probable or it's not likely that our calls get disconnected. But teamwork makes the dream work. That's another incredible patriot, Mr. Jonathan Pollock, who let me call back. So, as you guys probably know, every night at 9 p.m. for the better part of almost 4 years now, we sing the national anthem. And we're about to do that here in just about 2 minutes. So after that, I'll share a little bit more about me, and then if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But I will say, I had a press pass, engaged in absolutely no violence, had a documented history of citizen journalism, had a media platform, and the government, despite coming to see me in February of 2021, waited 2 years to charge me, and then when I refused a felony plea offer, they threw several more felonies at me, and have spent the last, almost 15 months fighting and working through the court process. But I'm happy to say that my biggest charge, the 16-12 obstruction charge, was dismissed as a result of the Fisher case, and ultimately, I was convicted on all remaining counts, 2 counts of what they call civil disorder, because apparently our actions that day impacted Safeway Trust from being able to properly deliver goods, and they're not going to blame Mayor Muriel Bowser for instituting a curfew that actually, from what I understand, may have led to that situation. But yeah, I'm just one of the many guys that are, I think there's about 30 of us total here in the jail right now. There's 14 of us on the unit, and they have now integrated the J6 unit with regular DC inmates, so it's no longer the J6 exclusive unit that we've had for so long. But one of the positives about that is tonight, as we do the national anthem here in just 1 minute, we've actually got some of those non-J6ers that decided to join in with us. So it's an incredible thing to witness, and it's been my honor to share that with the Northern Patriots for several months now, and here we go. Oh, here in the pod because for months they've been talking about, dissolving the January 6th unit. We kept them at bay for a couple months. And it's not because we don't want to interact with other people. It's not a race thing or a we're better than you or anything. The biggest issue is there are, as I said, there's about 30, at least 22 January 6th defendants that we know of that are in this facility that are not on our unit. And as somebody who's been here for over a year, I can honestly tell you that having the access to groups like the Northern Net Patriots, like the Freedom Corner Vigil outside, and just a community of shared burden, shared struggle, it makes a difference. And, it's unfortunate that rather than bring the rest of our guys together, they just brought, other inmates in, but I can definitely say that, we had our first basketball game, a non-J6 inclusive basketball game today. Things went well. I'm happy to report that the team J6 actually won the game. But things are going well. We're it's an opportunity to share God's love, to share the message and to prove to people that we're not all the things that the news media says about us, but it's also a chance for us to, everybody has a story. Everybody, regardless of their charges, is a human and a person at the end of the day, and it's interesting to, interact with some people who undeniably we never would under any other circumstances. But I did have a funny story that I want to share with you guys. On Tuesday, I actually went and did my pre-sentence interview, which is where the probation department meets with you and asks you about a million different questions, and they decide ultimately, what sentence they feel is warranted in your case. My maximum sentence, total possibility is 13 years. I don't think it'll be anything close to that. In fact, as the marshal said, Mr. Box, your sentencing scheduled for February. We don't know if we're ever even going to see you again, so congrats on the big win. And ultimately my goal when I met with this woman, who undeniably had this, done this interview process a million times, was I'm going to make this woman laugh. I have to get through there and show her that I'm an actual human and not just another statistic. And at one point, she said, Mr. Box, are you a member of any radical or extremist group? And I said, only the Boy Scouts of America. And my attorney kind of kneed me or punched me in the knee, and the woman kind of cracked a smile and said, Mr. Box, what do you mean? And I said, well, when I joined the Boy Scouts, they were only admitting boys. And now it's apparently become a boys, girls, and gender fluid organization. So she laughed, my attorney did not, but I hope she saw that, we can have a little bit of humor and I'm funny. I told her it was the worst job interview I've ever had, but it's a necessary part of this process. And guys, we're excited, getting past just the election win. We found out today that 2 of the district court judges have actually decided that they're no longer going to be impanneling juries, and they're going to put all the January 6th trials on hold until we find out what's going to happen in January. Now, I trust President Trump at his word. We're going to get those pardons in commutation. It's great to see the district court finally, moving in that direction as well. But I do have to let you guys know, it's unfortunate to find out that we actually have someone who was sentenced today, and rather than being allowed to self-surrender, they were remanded to custody, and there were actually 2 additional January 6th arrests today. So, though, the finish line is in sight, and we've had a lot of great wins recently, there are certain elements of these weaponized elements of our government institutions that just will not give up the fight, and it's just unfortunate to see. But it's an honor, as I say, anytime I talk, it's an honor to be a part of the January 6th community and family, and I know the finish line is in sight, and if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I think we're getting ready to wrap up. Does anybody have a question for Dominic?
I'll just say, have you been able to share Jesus with others?
Absolutely. We're doing that, and we actually have a Sunday church service that's self-led. It changes every week, but there's a lot. There are multiple different faiths in here. But we open up our church service on Sunday, and I can definitely tell you that both through our actions and our messages, we're doing our best to do that. I've actually had some really positive interactions, and I think the community on the outside who has allowed us to share and communing with these men who, based on what I've been hearing, have not had the level of hospitality and just, general decency in the other units they've been on. So that's not because of us, that's because of God's love and the love of the community that's all around us. So thank you guys for having us. Just remember that there are still families and defendants that are suffering that are not allowed on our unit. So if anybody could send some special prayers for those men, we would love to have them on the unit. And just remember that there are still people being arrested every day, and they deserve your support, prayers, and considerations as well. So thank you guys for having me. My name's Dominic Xavier Bott, number 387287. If anybody would like to send a prayer, any books, we share a lot of stuff in here. I'd be happy to get that out. But again, thank you guys for having me. If you're interested in reading any of my writings that I've done here in jail, you can check out my Give Send Go. It's givesendgo.com/freedomj6. And you can check out my videos in citizen journalism, including my trips down to the border and different interviews with Donald Trump Jr., Governor Brian Kemp, and other people on Rumble at Chatham Free Press, CHATHAM, free, FREE, press, PRESS, and Instagram, Not Down Box. God bless you guys, and we'll see you again.
Thank you, John. God bless you. Good night.
Thank you for using Global Towing.
So these calls are 15 minutes. He has it down to a science. He gets it in there, he gets his information out, and he just does a great job with it. But go ahead, Liz.
So I wasn't able to capture all those things he said there at the end that you could go to and see. Is there any way somebody could send that out to us?
Absolutely, and yeah, I can. There's some of it back here, but as far as the one that you really want to look at is Patriot Mail Project. And it's on the list. Patriot Mail Project will bring up a profile of every one of these individuals. You can search by first name or last name, and then all of his other information that he mentioned is going to be on there. So, Patriot Mail Project. Yes?
Is there a way for the public to be able to listen to the anthem when they sing it at every 9 o'clock at night? I have heard this before when they first started doing it, and it sounded to me like, you would be able to partake in it somehow, but I haven't been able to figure out if or how you could do that.
So the question is, how do you get to listen in on the anthem every night? So the people that hold the nightly vigil at the DC jail, which is Ashley Babbitt's mother, Mickey Witmoff, her website is forashley.com. It's on my list of things. But there are live streamers that follow and do just like we did. Just they take some calls and so on, and at the end they sing the national anthem every single night, and that's how they end their vigil that way.
So is she doing it from that website?
There are live streamers that are on that website that you can click on, and it will take you to those live streams. Yes, yes, indeed. All right. Anything else? Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your time and allowing us to come and speak. I'm sure we could talk for hours about this and share more, but thank you so much for having us here tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. That was really great. He did a really nice job. I learned a lot from him. So, if does anybody have anything they want to say or add or not add?
Yeah.
Oh, Pastor Shaw.